Captain's Log, July 27th, 1724. Morning. The dawn arrived reluctantly today, veiled behind thick, swirling mists that seemed to rise from the depths of the sea itself. There was a stillness in the air, a pervasive quiet that had settled over the ship like a heavy shroud. The Kraken's revenge drifted through the fog, her sails barely catching the light breeze. The Devil's Triangle was proving to be every bit as eerie and unnerving as the legends had warned. I stood at the helm, my hands gripping the cold wood, and watched as the crew went about their morning duties in an uneasy silence. The usual morning chatter and laughter were gone, replaced by a muted tension that weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. It was as if the Triangle's presence was sucking the life out of us, draining our spirits with every passing hour. David approached me as I stared into the dense fog, his face etched with concern. We exchanged a few words about the day's course, but neither of us could ignore the strangeness of our situation. The compasses continued to spin erratically, pointing in every direction but true north. I've tried to keep the men focused, reassuring them that we'll find our way through. But my own confidence is waning. This place seems to have a mind of its own, twisting and turning beneath us like a living beast. As we pushed deeper into the Triangle, I could feel the tension rising. The men are whispering amongst themselves, sharing stories they've heard about ships that have vanished without a trace, about ghostly apparitions and strange creatures that lurk beneath the waves. Superstition is a sailor's constant companion, but here, in these waters, it seems more palpable, more real. We continued to sail through the morning, keeping a close watch on the fog around us. Every now and then a shadow would appear in the mist, a fleeting, dark shape that seemed to follow us before vanishing as quickly as it had come. I caught sight of one such shadow myself, and for a moment my heart skipped a beat. It looked like a ship, but when I called for the lookout, he saw nothing. Just tricks of the light, I told myself, tricks of this damnable fog. Afternoon. The fog did not lift as the day wore on. Instead, it grew thicker, swallowing us whole. The sun, though unseen, beat down with an oppressive heat that made the air feel heavy and stifling. The men were sweating, their shirts clinging to their backs as they worked the rigging and adjusted the sails. The mood on deck was grim. The quiet had turned into a brooding silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the timbers and the soft lap of water against the hull. We had a brief scare around midday when the lookout shouted that he saw something ahead. A dark shape loomed in the fog, indistinct but massive. I ordered the crew to ready the cannons, fearing that we might be stumbling into another ship, or worse, some monstrous creature from the depths. As we drew closer, however, it became clear that the shape was nothing more than a cluster of jagged rocks jutting out of the water like the teeth of a giant beast. We altered our course to avoid them, but the incident only added to the growing sense of unease. David joined me on the quarterdeck after the rocks were safely behind us. He had been poring over the charts again, trying to make sense of our location, but the Devil's Triangle seems to have a way of defying navigation. He's convinced that we're still on the right course, but I can see the doubt in his eyes. The uncertainty is gnawing at him just as it is at the rest of us. We're not lost, not yet, but we're adrift in more ways than one. I decided to address the crew, to try and lift their spirits and keep their minds off the strangeness around us. I spoke of our mission, of the need to find thee and her crew, and of the rewards that awaited us when we returned to Kingston. But even as I spoke, I could see that my words were having little effect. The men's faces remained drawn and tense, their eyes darting nervously to the fog that surrounded us. It was clear that the Triangle's grip on their minds was stronger than any promise of gold. As the afternoon wore on, the fog began to change. It thickened even further, becoming almost a tangible presence, pressing in on us from all sides. It was like sailing through a cloud of smoke, so dense that I could barely see the bow of the ship from where I stood at the helm. The crew moved about like ghosts, their forms hazy and indistinct in the murk. The sound of the foghorn, low and mournful, echoed through the gloom, adding to the sense of foreboding that hung over the ship. It was during this unnerving quiet that we heard the first of the sounds. A low, rumbling groan, like the grinding of stone on stone, seemed to emanate from the depths below us. The deck vibrated with the noise, and I felt it in my bones, a deep, resonant hum that sent shivers down my spine. The men froze, their eyes wide with fear as the sound grew louder, rising to a crescendo before fading away as suddenly as it had begun. No one spoke for a long moment, the only sound the ragged breathing of the crew and the creak of the timbers. I tried to reassure them, to say that it was nothing but the shifting of the sea floor or the echo of distant waves, but I could tell that they didn't believe me. I didn't believe it myself. There was something unnatural about that sound, something that felt alive. Evening. The sun has set, not that we could see it through the thick blanket of fog. Darkness has settled over the ship, and with it, the oppressive silence has returned. The crew is huddled together on the deck, whispering among themselves, their faces pale in the dim light of the lanterns. The foghorn still sounds at regular intervals, its mournful wail echoing through the night like the cry of a lost soul. We've lit the lanterns all around the ship, but they do little to penetrate the gloom. The fog seems to absorb the light, swallowing it whole, and leaving us in a cocoon of darkness. The temperature has dropped and the air is damp and cold, seeping into my bones and making my skin prickle. I pulled my coat tighter around me and tried to ignore the sense of dread that has settled over me like a lead weight. I've sent David below to check on the men and make sure they're all accounted for. He's a good man, a steady hand in times of crisis, but even he looks rattled. I can see the strain in his eyes, the way he keeps glancing over his shoulder as if expecting something to jump out of the fog at any moment. We're all on edge, nerves frayed to the breaking point. As I write this, I can hear the groaning sound again, fainter this time, but still there, still vibrating through the ship. It's like a warning, a reminder that we're trespassers here, intruders in a place where we do not belong. I've tried to keep my fear in check, to remain calm for the sake of the crew, but I can feel it creeping in, seeping into my thoughts like the fog that surrounds us. I've ordered the men to keep a sharp lookout, to report anything unusual immediately. We've anchored for the night, but I don't know if it's the right decision. Part of me wants to keep moving, to get out of this cursed place as quickly as possible, but another part knows that we're safer if we stay put, at least until the fog lifts, if it ever lifts. There's a heaviness in the air tonight, a feeling of being watched, of something lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. I can see it in the eyes of the crew, the way they huddle together for warmth and comfort, their hands gripping their weapons as if expecting an attack at any moment. We're all on edge, waiting for something to happen, something that I fear we may not be prepared to face. The Devil's Triangle has us in its grip, and I don't know if we'll ever escape. The stories, the legends, they all seem too real now, too close. I can only hope that the dawn will bring some relief, that the fog will lift and we'll find our way out of this nightmare. Until then, we must remain vigilant, keep our wits about us, and pray that whatever is out there in the darkness stays away. But deep down, I know that this place isn't done with us yet.